Hello, everybody, and welcome to Christian Emotional Recovery, the YouTube channel. I'm your host, Rachel Leroy, and this is Christian Emotional Recovery, the YouTube channel. Check out my podcast if you haven't already, and keep in mind that what's on the YouTube channel is different for the most part than what's on the podcast. Please bear with me. My throat's a little scratchy because I've already been talking a while because I record my YouTube videos en masse, and so my voice can get strained a little bit. So bear with me. Thank you for your patience too, because when I read, I have scripts and I don't follow them verbatim, but it does give me an idea of what to say, and I have a lot of notes and a lot of sources. So I will look down at my computer. I've got my phone on something on top of my computer. So bear with me. And keep in mind, if you haven't, go ahead and click the subscribe bell and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you haven't gone to the podcast, I'll put a link below. The podcast is actually my main gig, so to speak. If you'd like to support this ministry and other survivors like yourself in what we do, people who have suffered from trauma, narcissistic abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, and childhood emotional neglect, you can also subscribe, and you can support anywhere from $5 on up. You can go check out the store. I am a writing teacher, but I also have a Christian Emotional Recovery store on the website, and it's rachelleroy.podia.com. And I'll put all the links below in case they're updated or changed after this video is made. So check the link out, okay? Check out the links. Those are the ones that will be updated. Other things, sorry, I've got some peppermint in my mouth too. That enables me to be able to keep talking because my throat is sore. So bear with me. So this video is practicing the A.C.O.R.N technique to heal anger. So I've already done a video on practicing the A.C.O.R.N technique to heal anxiety. And so I want to cover a lot of the major emotions that can be difficult. And so this time I wanted to talk about practicing the A.C.O.R.N technique to heal anger. And anger, that's a difficult one. And its nature is unique. And in my opinion, it's different than a lot of other difficult emotions we deal with, like shame and depression and sadness and anxiety. And of course, each of these emotions has its own nature, but anger's nature is different because one thing about anger that's unique is something that I call the anger sandwich. And there may be research on this. I honestly didn't look it up. This one doesn't have any sources, but something that I've seen experientially, that I've seen a lot of anecdotal evidence for. I'm a scholar, so I like to use research. But there's a lot of anecdotal evidence in my own life and in observing and working with other people that anger layers itself underneath things, and then things layer over the anger. Does that make sense? There's a protective mechanism around anger even more than other emotions. And so I think also that everybody is different. Every individual is different. But I would argue that women tend to deny their anger more than men and cover up anger with other emotions. And I would argue that men overall, not all of them, tend to cover up other emotions with anger. Because in our society and in a lot of societies, it's okay for men to be angry, but it's not okay for women. I'm not trying to get political or anything like that. Just in terms of cultural development, cultural patterns, women, especially Christian women, are taught it's not okay to be angry. It's not okay to get angry. And I'm here to tell you that it's a natural emotion just like anything else. It's what you do with it. And men are often, though not always, taught it's not okay to be vulnerable, to cry, to be sad, to be afraid, and to feel ashamed. And those are all part of the spectrum of human life. And it's sad that our society teaches men and women these destructive patterns, because all of those emotions exist in all of us. And we have no reason to be ashamed that we experience those things. It's what we do with them that matters. And that's why I have the A.C.O.R.N technique, among many other reasons. It was primarily that I created a strategy that I used for a meditation, and I realized it could be applied to journaling, to praying, to a general process of a lot of different types of healing modalities. And so you can use the A.C.O.R.N technique on a lot of things. And you may be asking, what is the A.C.O.R.N technique? And that is a valid question. So I'll go through the acronym in just a minute. But basically, the A.C.O.R.N technique is a set of steps where you process a difficult emotion from beginning to end. And it's not just to get rid of it, but it's to help yourself work through it. Your emotions are there for a reason, and they're letting you know something that you need to know. So keep that in mind. So I just wanted to go through what the A.C.O.R.N process was real quick first, and then go through a little bit about how that applies to anger, because I think seeing how it works in action with each unique emotion, because each difficult emotion is a little bit different, can be helpful so you know how to address that particular emotion at the root from the trauma, because emotions like this are a manifestation of difficult and sometimes traumatic experiences. So the first one, reading from my computer up here, the first step in the A.C.O.R.N technique is acceptance. So when you feel anger, the first healthy step is accepting that you feel anger and not layering on that. We'll talk about that in just a minute and what that is. And so acceptance is recognize your emotion, identify what your emotion is, give it a name, because naming it makes it lose its power. And then accept how you feel without judgment and acknowledge and own the emotion. The second step is compassion. Offer yourself open compassion and allow yourself to be surrounded by God's visceral love and grace while you feel the emotion at the same time. Remember, God gave you your emotions and they are a natural part of you, and there's nothing wrong with that. Rest in His love. Picture the emotion with a backdrop of open sky that is God's pure and infinite love, and feel the emotion and the love with this picture in your mind for a few minutes until it loses some power. Objective curiosity, that's O. Objective curiosity. Explore your emotion with objective curiosity and full awareness and mindfulness. What does the emotion feel like? Where is it located in your body? What is the sensation like? What about the emotion in your body needs attention most now? So let it talk to you. Ask it questions and do it in a way that's compassionate and patient. Feel the emotion and love with the picture in your mind for a few minutes until it loses some of its power. So that's objective curiosity. That's the O. The R, refocus, reframe. Once you understand where the emotion came from, refocus and reframe the situation around it. Flip the script and change the narrative around the situation. Don't try to change the emotion or force it away. Instead, consider applying the serenity prayer to the situation to gradually change your perception of it. What can I change about the situation? What can I not change? Okay? What can I not change? Do I know the difference? That's another thing. That's so important. You've got to know the difference. And that's tricky. Sometimes there's a little gray area there. And then lastly, write them down and take action to follow through on these questions. Reflect on them if you're in your meditation. Now, N is the last one. N one is no layering. No layering. You might be like, what is that? So this last step, it comes automatically and is the byproduct of the rest of the steps. By allowing your emotions to be there, you are not layering your emotion. It's okay to feel. Feelings are just indicators that something in our lives need attention. Not layering means don't be disgusted that you're angry, or don't be frustrated that you're depressed. Or if you are disgusted that you're angry, don't be mad at yourself for being disgusted that. You see how you can keep adding layers? Be where you are and don't add to that. It may even be not reacting to a reaction to an emotion, like I said. Start where you are. It means when a difficult emotion comes up, you don't bite the hook and react to it. You sit back and you observe. That's really hard at first, but you can do it. With practice, you can do it. I've said several times, the point of power you have is between the stimulus or the trigger and your reaction. And the longer you can make that space of time, that's where you're not going to fly off the handle if you're angry. You see? You see how that can help? Stand back and choose how you're going to respond while you let it be there, okay? So a little bit about the nature of anger, because anger is unique. Anger is usually covering up, bear with me, I'm reading off of my notes here. It's usually covering up a deeper emotion like sadness, shame, fear, or guilt. And A.C.O.R.N can help you uncover and get to the root of the emotional trauma that comes from that. So a lot of times anger is just covering up something deeper. Anger often is also an indicator that some kind of boundary has been crossed. It doesn't have to be a literal boundary, but it could be an emotional boundary. Anger is tricky because you can get caught in a vortex of anger where you keep reinforcing it and it never goes away. I've been there, and I will tell you about my own experience in a little bit. It says it just seems to recycle over and over. And then you can also work on it at the root, and then more will come up years or months later. That doesn't mean that you didn't heal anger. It's the nature of it, okay? And it, my notes, it says, but this is the tricky emotion, the trickiest emotion, in my opinion, to work with. Sometimes suppressed anger from years ago is buried under other anger, so that if you're able to work through some anger, more that is buried deeper and sometimes more powerful may come up. And then you'll think, why am I more angry if I just worked on this anger and it's gone? And you think that not only are you not healing, but it's worse, but you're actually uncovering the more powerful anger that anger was covering up to protect that. I know it's tricky, it sucks, but you got to learn to understand when you're uncovering and unlayering stuff and when you're reinforcing it. And that's subtle and that takes practice, but you can learn the difference. But it's a good thing because it means you're cleaning those blocks, hurts, and toxic places out of your soul so you can clear them. And then that other anger comes up and it comes out, and then you're free and clear, and you've got a block removed that may have been there for a lifetime in some cases. So my experience with anger, a little bit about my experience with anger. Anger is a normal and valid emotion, and I've struggled with anger so much. I've probably struggled more than any other emotion except for anxiety. And so I've struggled with it. I tried to get rid of it. I tried all the strategies. I can tell you this, positive thinking does not heal trauma. Positive thinking does not heal anger. Positive thinking has a place, and we're called to believe the best about things, to have hope, to have faith. There's a place for that, but I'm just saying that those do not heal anger. They don't. You've got to get to the root of that stuff and be willing to face it and feel it and deal with it, and possibly with the help of a therapist. But I would try positive thinking, positive affirmations, praying it away in scriptures. Does any of this sound familiar? Can I get an amen? And while they brought some relief, I'm not saying no healing happened. I never got to the root of my anger, and I would get caught in another anger loop, and I couldn't figure out how just talking about it didn't heal me. So talking about it, if you haven't at all, can be healing. Okay, so if you haven't ever talked about your anger, talking about it is the first step, and that can be helpful. But if you've done nothing but talk about it, doing it over and over does not heal you. You're not going to hear that from very many places. People say talking about your anger is what makes, but if you keep doing it over and over, I'm not saying suppress it. That's not what I'm saying. But if you do it over and over, it's not going to heal it because it just keeps replaying it. And it doesn't get to the root of why and what and how and where and when. That's what you need to get to. Talking about it, if you haven't at all, can be healing, but doing it over and over does not heal you. It can actually reinforce it. True healing from anger comes from getting to what's underneath it and acceptance. True acceptance. Okay? Now, anger is normal and natural. As Christians, we're often taught either implicitly or explicitly that anger is bad. But no emotions are bad. All emotions are a natural part of life, and God gives us all of our emotions as indicators of what is going on with us or to tell us where something needs attention. There's nothing wrong with that. Anger is a normal emotion. Even Jesus felt anger. He turned over the tables, and that's the only time we know of his anger, but I'm sure he got ticked off a lot of other times too. And it's an especially normal response if our boundaries have been violated. Okay, that's normal. You do not have to be ashamed that you're angry if somebody has crossed your boundaries. You should feel anger. That's normal. I'm not saying you should like lash out, but I'm saying that anger is normal. If our boundaries or our agency have been violated or misused in some way, you are going to feel anger, inevitably. So even Jesus felt anger, so be kind to yourself when you feel anger. It's one of those emotions that's taboo for Christians, and that's a shame, because there are plenty of valid reasons to feel anger, and no matter what you feel, you're not going to heal it if you push it down or shame yourself for it. The only way you're going to heal is to validate it and allow it to come up. Validating does not necessarily mean, well, this is good, this is right. It just means, yes, this is here. Yes, I accept this without judgment. Yes, this is part of my learning process. And that's okay. That's okay. So healthy ways to process anger that actually work. Positive thinking is great, but it does not help you heal these deeper traumatic emotions. So that's why I made the A.C.O.R.N strategy, so it can be helpful to process anger and what's underneath it to get to its root and heal it. And yes, expressing anger in appropriate and healthy ways can heal sometimes too. I'm not saying talking about it never heals. I'm just saying beware of that cycle of repeating, expressing it over and over. And if you start to see yourself in a cycle that won't stop, you're not healing. You're actually reinforcing it. So it's just a matter of not getting caught up and repetitive in it. That's what can re-traumatize us, okay? Finding balance in our bodies of feeling and acknowledging it without suppressing, denying, or layering it while not getting carried away with it is the key. That's where A.C.O.R.N comes in. There's different media and formats, like I said, where you can use A.C.O.R.N, and speaking it out, using meditations, writing it in a journal, and the form of prayer with God's help are ways that you can process these steps of A.C.O.R.N. So, doing this repetitively heals our emotions over time, reprograms our mind, and releases our trauma and anger from the body. And then I've already gone through the A.C.O.R.N technique. So if you need to go back to the beginning of the video and rewatch that, that's fine. So specifically, you can go through these steps with the A.C.O.R.N technique in mind, also remembering that layering is very easy, and sometimes you'll find multiple layers, and that's what I call an anger sandwich. An anger sandwich is, anger is one of those emotions where usually anger is protecting something, and it could be shame, it could be sadness and depression. And it's easier, you feel more power and more agency when you have anger. So sometimes anger can be a step up, but you can't stay there. It's not healthy. But you might be covering up a more vulnerable emotion, and that's the bread, the bottom piece of the bread. The anger itself is the meat or the filling of the sandwich, the peanut butter, whatever you want to put there. And then the hamburger, and then the top bun or the top piece of bread might be something that you layer on top of it. And so I came up with this term called the anger sandwich, where you layer your anger, and sometimes you may have something it's protecting, and then you have the anger itself. And then if you're like mad at yourself because you're angry, or you're disgusted with yourself, or you're shaming yourself, or you're sad because of it, don't condemn yourself for feeling that way. Layering is normal too, but you're being aware of it, and that is another part of the anger sandwich. So just keep in mind the anger sandwich, and that will help you to be aware of those layers. That doesn't mean that everybody has all those layers. You may be covering up something with anger and then have anger, but you're not layering. Maybe you're just angry and you don't have anything underneath it, but check, make sure, okay? And then so forth and so on. So keep in mind that, as I said, the space between the trigger, whatever makes you angry, and the reaction is where your power lies. The space between those two is where your power lies. Okay? So don't overwhelm yourself trying to heal or feel your anger all at once. Easy does it. Easy does it. You'll do it little by little. There's a corny saying I remember reading somewhere, and it's yard by yard, life is hard, but inch by inch, life's a cinch. It's so cheesy, but you'll remember it because it's a cheese fest. And who doesn't love cheese? So don't overwhelm yourself. And then Keep in mind, I also have 4 A.C.O.R.N meditations on YouTube, and those 4 meditations are a short and a long version. They're all pretty long, but there's the shorter and longer version with and without music. And if you'd like to have access to those all times, internet or not, you can go to my store. I'll put a link below, and you can buy a combo pack of all 4 of them downloads for $12. So you're also supporting what I do. So if you want to go check out that, I'll put the link in the store below. Right now it's rachelleroy.com. You can check that out if you'd like to download the meditations where you can access them at all times. You can also find them on Insight Timer, the app, okay? So you don't overwhelm yourself. And some places where I got some ideas that helped me come up with the A.C.O.R.N technique were Pema Chodron. Believe it or not, she's a Buddhist nun. This is just me. You don't have to do this if you don't want, but I learn a lot from people with other beliefs and other traditions, as long as it's not something completely out there. But she does a technique that helps you to heal emotions that's sort of similar. And I've gotten ideas from Lisa Romano. She helps codependents and children of alcoholics and narcissistic abuse survivors. And then Tara Brock, who is a psychologist also. And she does something called radical acceptance. But those are 3 people that have helped me come up with the ideas for the A.C.O.R.N technique. But I came up with my own version. And then check out the A.C.O.R.N meditations, like I said. And then the resources that you can use. The resources will be in the show notes. And so just a little bit about the A.C.O.R.N technique. Keep in mind you can use it for any emotion, but I just wanted to go over how it could apply to anger and some of the unique things that anger manifests, what to look out for when you're going through this. I'm not going to break down every strategy with you because everybody's process is a little bit different. But like I said, you can do all these different ways. You can pray it out. You can talk it out loud somewhere private and safe and record it and listen to it later. Just make sure it's a recording somebody won't find later that you don't want to hear it because it's private. You can talk it out with a therapist. You can do the meditations. You can journal it. I think journaling and meditation are the best ways to do it, but you can do it a couple of other ways too. So I hope that this video has been helpful, and it is called Using the A.C.O.R.N Technique, Practicing the A.C.O.R.N Technique to Heal Anger. Practicing the A.C.O.R.N Technique to Heal Anger. Keep in mind that you can get the A.C.O.R.N meditation package at my store for only $12, and check out the Facebook group. If you haven't, click the subscribe bell and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Christian Emotional Recovery. You have unique things here that you will not get on the podcast. If you haven't, check out the podcast as well, and check out the Facebook group where you can get a support and community as well. And I post a meme every Monday that provides encouragement and support. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that this has been helpful, and I hope it'll help you to realize that anger is a normal part of life, and that you're not a bad person and you're not defective because you feel anger. If you've experienced a lot of trauma and abuse, having a lot of anger, you couldn't be any other way. And that anger is not you. That's not who you are. It's layers of stuff that's covering up who you really are. And as you uncover those layers a little bit at a time, easy does it, a little bit at a time, you start to see who you really are and live the godly life that God intended you to live. And thank God for that. Thank you so much, and have a great day.